Are Arsenal going to have a really big choice at some point in this season? They're in the Champions League, they're in the Premier League. People are saying they're Premier League contenders. A lot of people last year were saying Arsenal will be Champions League contenders. Surprisingly went out. They've got a group of fixtures here that aren't the worst in the world. And they're in a bit of a situation where in the Premier League people are saying, this isn't the same Arsenal as last year. So could it be the Champions League that they go after? Do you think they're going to have to make that choice now or somewhere down the line? Or are they even going to have to make that choice at all?
This is the question that we need to be asking, because a team like Arsenal, effectively one of the best teams in the world, should not be making business decisions or choices. They should be able to compete on all fronts. Real Madrid don't have to make a choice in terms of competing in the Copa del Rey and the League and the Champions League. Man City ain't making a choice. They're competing on all fronts. And so the fact that you're asking that question about Arsenal maybe speaks to the way they've built this squad. And we're talking about an Arsenal side that at the time of recording, Declan Rice is suspended and Odegaard's injured, and now all of a sudden there's a midfield crisis at Arsenal. And this is not to disrespect what Arsenal have done. They're, again, one of the best teams in the world, but they should not be making a business decision. They should be trying to win the Premier League and the Champions League because they are that good.
But is that realistic?
Yeah,
Is that just madness that like they could think they could win both?
I'm so sorry, but when in my opinion, football was at its peak, it was like between 2004 and 2012. Look at Manchester United, you look at Arsenal, you look at Liverpool, you look at Chelsea, consistently in Champions League semi-finals, so always in them with a chance of winning it. Not saying that Liverpool and Arsenal at that point were competing in the league, but Chelsea and Man United were. They were in Champions League finals, semi-finals, and competing for the league. I don't think we can give Arsenal the out and say they can only compete on one of these fronts. And this is an Arsenal side as well, an Arsenal generation of fans, that let's not get it twisted. If you're, 28 or younger, you've only ever seen Arsenal in terms of major trophies win the FA Cup. You don't remember Arsenal winning the Premier League in 2004. You don't remember Arsenal being in the Champions League final in 2006. No Arsenal fan has ever seen their team win the Champions League. And so this is the point at Arsenal where, like Maloko said, the time is now. You've got to be competing on all fronts and you've got to try and win all the trophies available because there is no guarantee that Pep's going to retire. Everyone's waiting for Pep to leave the league. What if Pep signs a new contract? And then what? You have to try and win as soon as possible. When Liverpool were under Klopp and in their pomp, it wasn't like we're going to wait till next season. We get 97 points this year, then we'll get 99 points the next season because the time is now. And so for Arsenal, I know they've got injuries and I know their squad's not as deep as maybe Man City's, but they need to be competing for both the Premier League and the Champions League.
Yeah, I think it's unrealistic for them to do so. Really? I mean, we've just spent 15 minutes before discussing how Arsenal are going to line up at the weekend just because they've got one suspension and one injury, and that's just in one game. I think a lot has to be said for the way that Arteta's built his squad. He's created an unbelievable first 11 and maybe 2 or 3 substitutes. Absolutely fantastic. They all know their role. He's obviously got a philosophy that he's instilled in the players. They all buy into it, which is why they've ran Man City so close. For the money that he spent to have such a threadbare squad, some questions for me have to be asked. The fact that Odegaard's out now, and who do you play in midfield? Rice is out, and you may be fitting in 2 players to accommodate for his 1-game suspension. I don't think that Arsenal can compete on 2 fronts. They are going to have to make a decision. I think the decision that I think that they should make, if that's the way that Arteta wants to go with it, is to prioritise the Champions League. Because I think they've shown over the last couple of seasons, with, let's be completely honest, a lot of luck with injuries. They've pretty much had their first 11 for the vast majority of it. They've shown that they've fallen short both times against Pep Guardiola. I think the Champions League is where maybe Arteta can actually win a major trophy.
I wonder if they're going to have that choice to make really early. So they play Atalanta away and then they play Man City. Yeah. And we've been talking a lot about these injuries and how they're going to shift the squad around. Atalanta away is not an easy game. They play high pressing football.
Gasperini's going to be at them.
Yeah, and Gasperini doesn't care about Arsenal's problem or Arteta's problem. Mm-hmm. He just wants to play total football. So if Arsenal go and get rolled over by Atalanta, we don't know at the time of recording what happens in the Spurs game, and then they play Man City, they could be in a situation where they've lost 3 straight. Everyone's saying Arteta might already come under pressure if they don't win a trophy. So that choice might have to be made really early in the season.
And at that point, if they do lose to Spurs and if they do lose to City, they're going to be 8 points behind the leaders after 5 games. That's an insurmountable amount at this point of the season, I think.
I completely agree. But, and you say about the pressure comes from the naysayers, right? I don't think there's any Arsenal fan, or there are some Arsenal fans. There are Arsenal fans that remember them winning league titles and competing in multiple competitions, maybe put under pressure more than younger Arsenal fans. But they've just given Arteta a new contract. And then the caption or on the Instagram post, it said, belief in what we do. So they've got clear confidence that they've got the right man to win major trophies. I just think that, and I don't think it's unrealistic for me to say that I expect Arsenal to be competing on multiple fronts. This is not me saying that Arsenal will win the Champions League or will win the Premier League, but at this stage of their development, where they finished in his first season 8th, then 8th, then 5th, then 2nd, then 2nd, in relatively close title races, I think it's acceptable to expect Arsenal to challenge for both the Champions League and the Premier League.
I think it's acceptable to expect it. I think the squad that they have and the threadbare nature of it means that I don't think that you can expect that of that squad. I think the football club and the position that they are in and the position they should be in should be fighting on both those fronts. I think that maybe not enough finances have been spent on actually backing up certain key areas, and we've seen what has happened with this Odegaard injury, with this Rice suspension. I think it is actually slightly unrealistic to expect them to go the whole season competing on these two fronts, especially when you've got this new extended Champions League and you've got an incredible amount of fixtures. They've got 2 days to get home from Italy and then go to the Etihad. That's almost an impossible
And you're
task.
praying for a flight delay as well.
I'm saying absolutely nothing.
They're stuck in Atlanta.
Volcanic ash cloud.
I do also have volcanic ash.
Fingers crossed.
I do also think that Arsenal are unlucky. Again, I feel like I'm defending Arsenal here, and it's far from it. But I do think they're also unlucky in terms of the transfer window. They let Smith Rowe go. They let Fabio Vieira go and go into Porto, and then they suffered the injuries. And those moves wouldn't have happened if they had the hindsight of Odegaard getting injured and Marino injured himself before he's even played a game. And so
Gabriel injuring Marino.
Gabriel injuring Marino and training before he's even played the game. And so for Arsenal, it's a position right now where they're treading water. And unfortunately for them, they've got huge fixtures on the horizon. But come the end of the season, if Arsenal haven't competed effectively in the Premier League and the Champions League, then there will be pressure and there will be questions asked, because this is, I'd say, in terms of this iteration of Arsenal, we're 3 years in. They finished second, and this is the year where they're supposed to compete and win something major. And so if they don't do it this season, they completely fall off, then I think the questions will be asked.
But even if they don't fall off, today, as of recording, Mikel Arteta has got his new contract. Even if they finish second and they get to a semi-final of the Champions League, how long does he have before he wins one of the major 2 trophies?
The thing is, I think this idea of like replace manager, win trophy just doesn't exist, really and truly.
Yeah.
And so I think he's the best possible thing that they can have. And realistically, you know that Manchester United were looking for a manager, couldn't find one. Liverpool ended up at Arne's slot, and they looked at some other options with Xabi Alonso and others. So I think realistically, I don't think there is a time limit really on it. I think they have to win one soon.
Yeah.
But Guardiola's there. The Champions League with Madrid is impossible to win. I think you have to be realistic and say all they have to do is just keep competing, and at some point they'll get over the line. Now they'll be in a different situation if in 2 years' time they still haven't won the Champions League, still haven't quite got near the Premier League, because other teams will catch up, whoever that may be, and then I think they might start getting called bottlers. But I don't think that needs to happen right now.
Well, yeah, that's when you start asking questions like, okay, if Arsenal don't win one of these 2 major trophies, the Premier League or the Champions League, or even the FA Cup in Arteta's like prime in terms of this fully formed team, then you're asking, what's the difference between this Arsenal team and the Spurs team that Pochettino had that finished third, that finished second, that got to a Champions League final but didn't win any trophies? Is there any difference? Because the way Arsenal fans talk about Arteta is in a completely different category of school to the way they talk about Pochettino. Pochettino for 3 or 4 years had Spurs competing for league titles and getting to a Champions League final. Mikel Arteta has yet to show that, Arsenal.